like if you want to keep that, you can photocopy it.
Yeah.
But you should rip that sheet out. You should fill it in and mail it back to him, because there was a blank at the bottom of each category.
Right. The reader's folder.
Right.
So we should put his name in all the bad categories.
Yes.
And Gary's name in all, our names in all the
right. Does this thing pick up sound?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, I didn't say that.
Well, for example,
There's a passerby. One of the LA. Okay, be seeing you.
On the tape we made drive back to Sebastopol, Spencer was going on and on about a very bad encounter he had just had with Gerald Burns.
Yeah?
Which, the encounter? Not well at all.
Well, but
apparently Gerald had written a very damning review of something Spencer had written, and Spencer wrote back to him and so.
Yeah.
But Spencer was going on and on about this from the backseat of our car while Anna was videotaping us.
Yeah.
So we left that part off of the videotape that Spencer asked us to send, that he was sending to somebody else.
But it still exists.
Oh yes, and will forever. It'll be in in our archives.
Right.
Well, see, that's one of the things that I knew that the Huntington had some American literature stuff.
I got through it actually.
Yeah.
And Julia? Hi. How do you do? Well, you've been taking care of yourself? Will? Hi, this is David. Good to meet you. Good to meet you. Glad you could come. Oh, we're early.
Starting early. Starting.
How'd your reading go?
Oh.
I'm down there on Thursday, so I missed you.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to
That's pretty good. Here's my duty.
I have a regular reading series. Jerome. That helps a lot. Michael Davis.
Michael's there. He was there.
Yeah, something to drink.
And so where was this?
Broadway. You did some of the biggest Broadway shows.
No, I mean the evening.
Oh, the Duke.
That was an evening. That was a commemorative.
It's a memorial thing after his death, and it was probably one of the best nights I've ever had in theater. It is really good. He's got
Yeah. He gets around.
What happened is coordinating things in the right sequence.
It's harder with the divorced person. David came to
Commercial traveler.
Literary. I only have that series.
reporting the light.
That's how I do it. Right, but I need to show you that still, because that's so macabre in the highlight.
Well, it's a prerequisite for school. They have to take something.
lived in the town where living up there then.
Well, that's not what it's the same as reverse. But where does he
Yeah.
Well, I think you can try.
I can try that. Bypass the body bag. Andre, either use this or don't publish it if you don't use it.
Right.
Yeah. Then we have cinema verite here.
Oh, that's right.
But you're not jiggling it enough there, Anna.
You're not advertising anything.
Well, little action in the...
Now you have to go like this.
This man here is a film editor. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
but
so
but I
send
think
it
the
to me.
jiggling will happen once the reading starts. That's when it'll make the most sense.
We'll send a free copy to Tom Mandel.
Send it to me and I'll edit. I'll edit myself.
You edit yourself.
When they got married, standing outside the Center for Terrestrial Magnetism.
Say that again?
Did they get married?
I mean, were you there?
No,
I wasn't there for the
it's
wedding.
a Sony.
They were getting married shortly.
No, I know, but it's a Sony TR-101.
No, I'm not sure.
high
which- No.
I was going to pick this up until I realized I already have this book in
It's,
Spanish. The title in Spanish isn't actually a computer with the song. It's more like from where the songs are.
Yeah, because the high 8 is going to be difficult to work with my VCR. So I thought this one would be better. You have to get a special adapter or something.
To what?
With the high 8?
Oh,
I have a section in there about which is these are the markets beforehand. I'm not one of those people who's going to go back and add.
That's right. Yeah. That's Harry.
hello.
He's my student. Why not? Yeah. And that's right. He doesn't get mad. He's an enthusiast. And so, have you read that second book that came out? Also, the updated one. You mean?
It's actually
out? No, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it came out. Barry Aaron had a book in the same series.
Yeah. He won't be sending it to me. I don't think, because he won't have. I'm not that much in touch with him.
Well, also it's Cambridge and they're not.
That was
Jared's always one of the.
that was about the 50s quiz shows. We you know, the quiz shows and the TVs and these I call them pop throwaway societies. Because each one of these programs is like a little society, right?
It was a good film. I recommend it. Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen it? Quiz show.
No,
That's good. You haven't seen it? You
I don't go to movies.
Advertisements would ask me to come
I'm a film editor, so I do this for a living.
Yeah, but you haven't seen everything out there, right? Don't you want to know what the others are doing?
I
And
don't go to movies. I rarely go to movies.
I see. So you wait till they come on video and watch them?
I
wait
don't
until
even
they-
watch them on video. I come home and I read books.
That's good. I like that.
You know, because movies just bore the shit out of me.
Oh no.
Fuck you, movies.
I don't think David's gonna like having this on his tape.
I do love movies. Since I work on, there was no reason just to go see them after class.
I know what you mean.
What did your mother say? You know,
And did he say the darndest thing?
he said the darndest thing. He says, you know what? She says, the thing about it is, he says, well, how did she do it? He says, you know, brother and sister, this is an awesome. So what did your mother say about it?
Which is very sad.
It's not enough.
That's what happens to good places.
This is incredible, man. I was just laughing because it was kind of like a cartoon, you know. And,
What it is.
because the people are more on board.
Hello, how are you?
Fine.
Good.
You know, and they're going to work more.
Well, it's massive. I refuse to read there. Gus to read there even on I just say, so I thought.
Let's not. But anyway, and other people are going to end up thinking that I think it'd be better. This is, well, I'm also that everyone, also, you know, like January, I'll be here almost a month. Yeah, I'm always, my pattern is I go home on Tuesday, come back Thursday night, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Oh. We can get together.
Wade music from our featured artist Sunday night.
We all say we don't care, but there's a child down in all of us that wants to be adult, or wants to be coddled, or wants to be fed candy.
Well, yeah, but it translates.
You've left your seat of honor.
Well, I just came to get my little bag.
You must have loved LA getting
Yeah, they
rolled
have
over.
some samples. Yeah. It was
All right, everybody want to, if you can get a place to sit, I know it's not the most comfortable in the world, but it's better to sit than not. Than not, and to stand. It's more comfortable for everyone if you can sit. Most of you know our guest today. In fact, David is right here. We've made it a once-a-year policy now to have David come read with us. So I'm not going to give a long introduction. As you know, David has written many, many books of poetry. What is it, over 30 now, or 20?
30-something.
30-something. It's a lot of books of poetry. Some of which we have here in the bookstores, many of which we don't, but they're wonderful. He's a wonderful poet. He's won the Western States Book Award. He's won a Guggenheim and many, many other awards. And has also written fiction. I don't think we've talked much about your fiction in the past, which is really quite wonderful too. At least the book.
There's a Black Sparrow book called Men, Women, and Vehicles.
Yes, we had that. I think somebody bought it. Anyway, he's a wonderful writer, and as you well know, an excellent reader too. We published a couple years ago the Harbor Master, actually last year, the Harbor Master of Hong Kong, and then his brand new book is Cast of 10, which Beck published, which is really a beautiful book too. So both of these are available today if you'd like to get copies. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to David.
Thanks, Douglas. Thanks for coming. Good to see you here. I'm going to read from The Harbor Master and Cast of Tens today. I'll start off with the older book. The organization of this book is connected to the title, not a radical procedure really. But I should perhaps say something about the title that you would figure out for yourself if you had the book and had time to live with it. I'm interested in the situation in Hong Kong. It seems to me like a microcosm of the situation of the world today. It's extremely unstable in some ways because, you know, a completely new form of government is slated to be instituted there in another, I think, 3 years or so. That's all they have left to go. So they don't really know what the future holds for them. Also, it's a center where a lot of money moves through very fast with all the destabilization that can bring along. It seemed to me that my personal experience, no doubt, was being affected by these worldwide factors. And so, although this is a poem of book of personal lyrics of a certain kind, they may not appear personal, but that's because they are personal. Because we now have in place a rhetoric of personal poetry, and it doesn't seem to me like you can really be personal if you're using an already established rhetoric of how to sound that way. So these poems are so personal that they don't sound personal. But I did want to have at the middle of it, like a yolk and an egg, or a germ and a yolk and an egg, or something, a piece about Hong Kong. But I've never been there. I know nothing about it except what I read in the newspapers, basically, and what people I meet tell me. And so the title poem of the book, The Harbour Master of Hong Kong, is actually almost exclusively made up of excerpts from newspapers, and to a large extent from the London Sunday Times, a newspaper I get hold of primarily because it has sports results in it that I can't get in America, like European soccer and British cricket, depending on the time of year. But I also, since I have to pay $5 for it, I read it diligently, cover to cover, most of the week. And they have some pretty good political articles in there. But the very first piece in this 10-part poem, and I won't read all of it, that's the title poem, is actually taken from another source. It's actually taken from a work called Legitimization Crisis by the German philosopher Jürgen Habermas. And I'm sure it was the play between Habermas and Habermas that gave me the title of the book. The patient experiences his powerlessness vis-a-vis the objectivity of the illness only because he is a subject condemned to passivity. In classical aesthetics, crisis signifies the turning point in a fateful process, not external to the identities caught up in it. Crises arise when the structure of a social system allows fewer possibilities for problem solving than are necessary to the continued existence of the system. Crisis states assume the form of a disintegration of social institutions issue from unresolved steering problems. Identity crises are connected with such. The market secures the power, sanctioned in civil law, to appropriate surplus value for private use. Communication between participants is systematically distorted or blocked on pain of ruin. Those are sentences found all over this 300-page book. I may
made the selection because I thought they made the point. And then I have an anecdote after it, which is basically better told, I think, than read aloud. And it has to do with my college days, which were spent in Vancouver, Canada. Now, coincidentally, a great place for resettlement from Hong Kong by wealthy people, so that although the Canadian economy is not doing too well, Vancouver is booming. But I knew this married couple, and I used to hang out at their house. Once a month, an old boyfriend of the wife's would appear, and he'd be on a one-day bender. It was payday. He was a middle-level executive with a power company up there, and he just used to tie one on and disappear for 24 hours. But he didn't disappear for us, because he was always over at Fred and Carmel's house. And this is the 50s, when people weren't that casual about long-distance phone calls. But he always, that was part of his bender, was to spend a lot of money conspicuously to us by phoning people he didn't know who lived in remote places. I mean, not remote. I mean, London or Hong Kong are not remote, but they're a long way from Vancouver. You might say Vancouver was the remote place. And I remember once we were drinking there, and he was fiddling around on the telephone, and finally he got our attention. And because I had been born and raised in England, he wanted me to come to the phone. And at the other end, I found an intern from Guy's Hospital in London. And we were supposed to speak to one another, you see. In command, but of course we had nothing to say to one. Well, what's the weather like there? I don't know, it's night here, and we're drunk. Don't be impatient, this is a narrative of capitalism, it says here. But another time, when I wasn't there for this, it was only hearsay, he tried to get through to the harbor master of Hong Kong. And it took him a long time. And finally he did. And he said, "Clear those junks out of there, we're coming through." Which is a sort of racist, imperialistic remark to make, but when it was retold as a sort of shaggy dog anecdote, which of the 50s, it was very popular. Many years later, though, I found out, at least I was told, again hearsay I suppose, by a woman who was born and raised in Hong Kong and now lives in Toronto, that there is no harbor master of Hong Kong. In fact, she said to me, "What's your next book?" I'd gone in to give a reading. I said, "That's what I'm going to call it." She said, "Well, there is no harbor master of Hong Kong." I thought, perfect. Because it's a book in its small way about the world today. So that's perhaps, otherwise there's all these grumbly newspaper quotes about the inequities of venture capitalism. And if you want to know the immediate history of it, you can go and look it up. No, it's too boring to read again. So I'll read some poems now. Because I don't think that's a poem. That's like the square chunk at the middle of a round ball, spherical sphere. Oblate spheroid. Logic. He was carried into the garden. Therefore he was infirm. The block was lined with bars. Therefore the town was friendly. She was just like one of the family. Therefore we neglected to disarm her. The night was about to be buried. Therefore we hired lovers of sleep. Masher of dialects. I'm sorry if some of these poems are funny. I certainly don't mean them to be jokes. But it's true that I deal in cognitive dissonance, and that makes people laugh. There's nothing you can do about it. But laugh. Masher of dialects, which originally was master of dialects, and I thought, oh no, come on, I'm a small-time mimic. But masher seemed much more to the point, especially thinking of the world today and how all languages are getting mixed up. Let's see, are you? Touch can't do tone without some crutch. and any class of person can break bone. Requiring time off work, a state of sin, says the boss who's a jerk. Between the assignment and the invention, the terminal and the laptop. The new enslavement will find its lauditors with its moiety. Otherwise, poetry will be written and written and written. Acts of defiance, assertions are never naked. That some individual stole time from Leviathan to pile Pelion on Ossa. Senseless, worse, self-destructive. Nerve endings, hungry for blood, rage, and won't shut up. Listen to reason. Smarten up. Piss or get off. Sauve qui peut. Here's a kiss. Outside. This time orders what ensues. To look over the shoulder and part of a flank, thus protruded. I put my hand in the pocket of my jacket while it's hanging up and feel poetic. It's clever of anyone to step in a river we don't believe we've met. A favorite word has been wet. As my mouth interferes with this dictation, they say, I am taking. Like a coffin or green lawn, the philosopher walks by his church clock, pondering his body, how long it can go on without noticing or noticing him. He is said to be taking a walk he is walking, foreshortened, and in the abstract of the pilot now, lights his pipe with a flare we find striking. There's a set of 12 in here, but it is in 12 parts, and I don't feel like reading them all. And then that depends on one another. Set of 12, a subtitle, It to Experience. Might be the first past part of something ahead it presents. It's past, present, and future. The name of a play by our host here. 1, it must be impossible. No, it must seem so. And the difference? Why bother then? But the difference, a kind of remainder of what would be forgotten. Can't use this for anything or anything else. 2, these parts stuck together that were once wholes. How human can we get over the gap without the sad remnant left for the gods that were once parts? And what about stuck? That gets the attention. And what about deserves? And what about deserves? That what preserves but us? What about us? 4, love fallen into puts a pit or a pool where a person was and is. 2, a fiction, a comfort that must be impossible, that temptation. The remainder resists its insistence. Sticky surface, violent invisible collisions, reminding of somewhat, can help come in the shape one's in. A soft spot in an obdurate word one hadn't handled quite this way, if before has time in it. For what about way? I think these poems are about reading. What happens in reading, don't you? It's the sense of a sticky surface. And how, in fact, do things cohere or coagulate when you read a sentence with so many tugs and pushes in it, i.e. words. But it ain't just that. I mean, the ground is interrogated also. 6, my life had stood a loaded gun. There it is in the corner of, but like that, I like that. But that is not what makes the trigger fingered. A contradiction in a cave, stuck together for approval. Rent for approval, for rent. A life had to live, and what is after all? And part 2 of this. The world approves. Why else were you here? And you are here. And the world had stood in the, some term, meantime. Seven, the gift that might be ambiguous is a present that will be unwrapped. Symmetrical agreement, stuck together for approval. Something else that is a part, that is a part, if there's a whole. Before the predicate, the hand withdraws. Somewhat has been left over in time as position. A slight weight or diminishing acoustic, ruling out one, ruled in. Eleven. Ends. A sense of such, for a system one wields one. Weariness, irrelevant. Quote, human, a consolation, abrupting with its definition, the defining. And 12, the last one. Misspelled or at variance. To think time's apparently blank space, quote, total articulation that must be impossible. Settles for less. Hey, that's okay, street shouts. But disposition has always died in the eye it puts out, the sight it topsets. Between be and seem, the irony, the word for the experience of the word for the experience. I'll read a couple more from this book. The Edible World. This made its way into Sun and Moon's terrific anthology, in case some of you don't know about The Other Side of the Century. It's the big book. It's laid out along there. Right? It's the one that's inches thicker than any of the others. But this is a very thin poem I want you to see, because it's called The Edible World. You know. If we're going to eat it all up, we should watch our appetites. 1. Tourists wonder their ideas. Idea. The huts, streets, struts, hats, tattoos like little socks. And stop a little longer, wistful, grateful, to be not one of those, hemmed, jammed, yet enabled, these ruins kept up. The bells, the flowers, the rats. The tourists ponder before the next cyclopean eye adorns the neck, stuck out for the instance. 2, that the cardinal points, that the disposition of stars, that these systems of high pressure accommodate, that one can be bent into the straight. People, cat-like at the beach, register the next. The eased body. Is its mind eased? Glancing up off the cars, delivering and returning the goods, destination generated. Child in the wave, watched by the parent, that nothing will occur that hasn't yet. Let go of the string when the balloon floats up. arranged this book by alphabetical order. Sometimes I changed the title in order to get them in an order I wanted as well. But at the end, I had as a kind of afterword, I suppose, a poem called After Freud. I tell him to knock it off. He says, your head? When Dad was living, we hit it off, my brother and I. He who took care of the void became the void. To plug it with oneself becomes the project. There's the rush of Dad to the head, and next, my brother attacks my plot because it's me he'd slash and burn in his cue ball park. There's the rush to the head of nothing that sped through my brother, not stopping at his airport when he was mapping his plantation. I've seen his plan, and I'm not in it. But that makes sense. There's a plane to be met. That's not me on it. I always wanted a poem that was so personal that I couldn't be located in it. And it seemed to me like I would be a kind of obstacle there to something that one might otherwise identify with. And this was the book, a cast of tens that comes. It's nice to be reading this in Hollywood, virtually. But this is only a cast of tens. Although I do like those big old spectaculars. But this was the next book along. And I think I made these poems as personal as they are out of watching a lot of TV. But, you know, as soon as it started to thematize, I broke it. So, but I'm not with absolute success. Because I didn't want absolute success. No, the hell with it. So I remember talking years ago with Charles Simic about love poems. You can't write love poems now. Not meaning me personally, of course, but you. And years later he wrote and said, what happened to those love poems you showed me? I couldn't find the box they were in. But this is a love poem, I think, among whatever else it's delivering, or it's about not writing a love poem, you know. And it's called The Two of Rocks. The Old Man is 112 pages long, and so is the sea. They are deeply symbolic, psychotic. But we, who are a rock and a rake to the insinuations of sound and in among the trees where the rocks look back. Those trucks haul a city to punctuate not thought, yet the drawing of the sorts. Of persons we are, as we say, instances. The completely depressing were an achievement, presence defeats. And joy, as for that. My mother was locked. No, not locked. My mother was lost inside herself. One wanted to be locked up. Surroundings disappear. The face assumes the mirror of highly polished stone. But you always moved. A foot kicks a pamphlet, brought who knows how to this rare spot. Quote, orgasm completes the circuit, or you deteriorate. Love the one you're with, it's ripped and smudged. Peel back that hide, let one another's beauty in, and you always moved. Bury the third, then poison or person. Lumbar ganglia, solar plexus, carpe, and then probably diem, but possibly dream. They laugh when they read this, their eyes fill, tears course down their cheeks. Who can bear a crying child, and who is not a child? Yet the you always moved. A moment collected, swelled, dropped, and in evaporating, noticed lips, as well as a handful of bored holes. Accents are metaphysical. Accents are metaphysical. The Swedish film is dubbed with Swedish accents. The typewriter sounds like breaking sticks. Two read a letter. One reads, one listens. A reader attends in mind. The car seen from above, if cameras see. A shot so I can die, if love can. ... She manages a smile about then, the syncopated ticking of two clocks, raised by words meaning nothing really. B minus, B major. Get me some metaphors, I'll glisten. Then the notion you never love anyone, except in those ways of theirs, meaning nothing really. His narrative's face fills the frame. In its own wake or shank, the little faith I have, unquote, the screen darkens to go blank. Commanding attention along the one horizon with terror of the unseen and of his command of the words, telling him this is it, the family version, that these rocks contradict. The cock nosing up the channel sounds like history beside the dance the cells of history proclaim. The evidentiary skin, in certainty whereof we touch, relinquish touch, people being what they are. I can't recall my mother in motion, only bits and pieces frozen. He asks for her fingers, in his, a hope, a pebble to worry, to be wrapped up in. They touch nipples, material, the bark of trees, even confession screens, dead were it not alive. From these high hills the myth flows through gully, over stone, as though ocean drawn, where the cards are being laid out. This and this contradict impossible, but mind those two places at once. No reassurance were of sufficient plausibility. These trees arrested these rocks. With thematic nausea, the laurel turns viridian. The rays themselves have walked. As the writer has to believe in her text, scenes form. Satire and nymph, root and grunt. I sat through this before. The next card, like a rock cast in the sea. He is remembering his name and how it sounded once in a witch's dictionary. Items of archaeological significance. We hope the Indians will win. Trucks crush the uprising. We can leave. We are sane. An actual site that had something to do with that poem, where there were trees and rocks. And it seemed that the rocks were in relation to the trees in such a way that the trees must have been there first. The rocks must have then rolled downhill and it stopped. But the rocks were huge and the trees weren't that big. But that was the appearance. And also there were holes bored in the rocks, which I think had been done by indigenous persons who were making acorn flour. But you know, what are you going to do by the time you've written it? It's a handful of bored holes. It's not going to do it. And I must say that, well, I don't have to, but I'm going to say that there's a couple of friends of mine who are poets, persons of almost my age, and a couple of them, two of them were actually in my mind when I wrote this poem, but it was probably about my own senses, obviously my sense of things. But I was just thinking about, if you're sitting down at midnight or any time of day, it could be noon and you could pretend it was midnight. If you were sitting down to write a poem, it might come down to two insistences of however cleverly you think to distance yourself from what you're saying. And I guess that's what this starts with. The poem is called Colander Honey. Colander Honey. There's a saying, Coleridge has a poem called, what is it, Dejection? Is it his Dejection Ode or another poem he wrote about dejection? I don't remember. But you know, life on laudanum was not easy. Life without laudanum was even worse. So we were talking about this at lunch, you know, what is having a serious drug problem? Either you can get it or you can't. But he said that work without hope was strange nectar in a sieve. It's very poetic line for it, but that became Colander Honey with me. And frankly, I couldn't be as bleak about it as Coleridge, perhaps because I'm not the poet Coleridge was, and perhaps also because times are bleaker.
You couldn't get the laudanum.
Is that an award? It sounds like it,
The
doesn't it?
Laudanum Foundation.
Won the laudanum from the Laudanum Foundation for giving people something to do instead of have a religion. Oh, okay, anyway, enough of that nonsense. Now I have this nonsense. This it starts off then with two lines that are imagined as being overheard. So I have quotes around. No one, a facility. My life is real. These runes, what apparition handles towards one's hands, hurdles the gag order, being generally circulated. As a friend's pain transpires, I scribble away at midnight, is the question, who cares? As their menhirs locate the moon, to bring her back, to dwarf their mistake. Now does everyone know what they're here for, reflected in still pool and the life of its own. They left toasters on the beach. The best part of a life whose only other witness dies. To kill, to kill. I was thinking of Leftover Life to Kill, which was Caitlin Thomas's book, Dylan Thomas's book. Leftover Life to Kill. Wow, what a proposition. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. They left toasters on the beach, which was the cargo cultists, you know. When the American soldiers were there during the war, there were toasters. And a lot of other good things. And when they left, if you had any toasters, you took them down to the beach, hoping that would bring them back with whatever other technology was there. And sometimes they did come back with very advanced technology that exploded. They left toasters on the beach. The best part of a life whose only other witness dies, ... to kill, add, or, replacing the self with the bottom line. Thought in our rhetoric like flies in amber laid. Listening to promptings to step off that vehicle from the hilarious throng, afflicted with wisdom's rain of acid, etc. Handed to all, by all, while out for a drive, while out for a ride. That wall has to be someone, something likes me. Solitary discourse, man hunches above some level surface. Nails better than attract, the word she, Mrs. T, would render meaningless, or Lee. No such thing as culture. Gobbledygook, smokescreen, squid ink, and say, here's your check. Margaret Thatcher said there was no such thing as society. Gee, who made her a lady? And we were at a do in San Jose, remember, where one of the poets said he didn't think there was anything. I was going to ask where the check came from.
Oh, that was Lee Young Lee?
Yeah, it was Lee, right. It was Lee. No such thing as society. How could we understand what he was saying? I'm sorry, I'm not, you know. Virgil, where's Virgil? Come and take me away from this. The word she, Mrs. T, would render meaningless, or Lee, no such thing as culture. Gobbledygook, smokescreen, squidding, and say, here's your check. Here on bellies lulled by truth, or you're cured of uninterruptible babble, where Ab is also by. We sat by the creek and pictured a log fire. Juan will my eyes the light finden. It's bald as your knee, ovally, the length of a thigh, jocular. Someone will disturb you. The question must be when. People want too much and are too good at getting sane. Exploding from touch to touch, however, wrecks the careful plan, the rough circle defining sane. Beauty perishes, or children who dwelt within, in your insides, never even phone. Landscapes savaged by guardian robots. He builds as the light wanes. That was published in an English magazine, and they had it as garden robots. And if you've been in England, you know they have these sort of guardian gnomes on their lawns. Guardian robots. Well, you know, I don't think it really matters. Because the spirit is between the lines. That's why the lines have to be there. And it's not that I would write just anything, because no one can. Let's see, what do I want to read? Oh yeah, this one. God, this one. Yeah, I like this one. Well, I like parts of it. Actually, I think that the TV show I've been watching was a documentary on Van Gogh. When I was writing part of this poem, not all of it. It took place over some weeks. In fact, I'll read the one before it and then that one, and they're fairly long. I might stop that. I didn't look at the clock when I began. You got to take on the time now. It's been about 20 minutes, 30 minutes? 30 minutes. What's the usual thing here, 40? 30. In big cities, it's always shorter. People have other things to do. Well, I'll read these two. And this is called While Knitting. While Knitting. Water was trickling somewhere, but then it was simply the clock. Here comes your spouse, who once upon a time was quite unknown to you. In this photograph of your birthplace, no cars can be seen on the street. Only horses and some carts they draw. Yet your entrance began in a taxi. Now you know the word necessary. What was browner about the past is a quality of ink and paper, a function of time, and it is its passage. The flesh sags at the elbow. Did the Welsh accent colonize India? Schubert played Beethoven. In the movie last night, allowed itself to be replaced. You will not find this refundable. Quality depends on conjunction. Destiny feels so special. Why we imagine sequence and the legal meaning of a moment. Until I fall in love, all my existence is rectangular. He was inarticulate in an attractive sense. His names came from Latin. So much of her thigh showed. 15 years must have gone by. The church has a facade meant to set off faces as transitory phenomena. Then you discover you share birthdays, like thunder and lightning, and can leave a lot unspoken. What did they see from the train, and what did they notice? Lonely bubbles leave the head in alienating long-distance shots. Vast city with its vistas has no need of us, yet without us is vacant and still. Dancing as an idea is odd. much as clothing in a tropical zone. Or that he likes or dislikes her ears, or the crosses on the graves, the history of the word like. The telephone in Greek could signify labyrinth in Spanish, while I am a caryatid for the palace in the square we uphold doesn't care. Here comes the mail, but no letter from your spouse. How well does she know you, for that matter? Luis? Nuestra? Nuestro? Many kinds of snow. Do pesos drop? And how many? Dawns break into any language, bringing its thoughts of itself. The one saying much, the one saying nada, the one saying madrugada. How what the words convey means less than the picture squares of touch in the mind where all can be counted on, alone where surprise stays unlikely. Never alone. Hush that presages expectancy. A kick in the teeth, the rushed motion to the far horizon. Everybody loves those stars, so resembling areolae. Then there's deserve next to do it to him. All these B's and K's, even the mute hears, alone in the scarlet field that is yellow to him. But the unused days won't flush, nor the stories wash, concerning a biography, never the point. More to the purpose is the animal mask, nor never quite not. Faint down covers the cheeks. The eye is a whale's. From poled willows, swords protrude. Step off the transport into anywhere, happiest in country settings, where he can float up in quotes, detached from the text, as the phenomenon would have it. The farcical characters the elders take as law, but the string declares it a kite. In his pocket, a church. English U accent felt best for cultural instruction, describing the class act it all is. Red-orange roofs and groves, silver and twisted, green sleeves, silvers the mourners, as if these were downs. Poplars, sheer pigment, and lindens planted in lines, a popular arrangement, says the historico-botanical agent. Empty, restful, vacant, exciting. But the mauve with the gold reconciles. If beached boats watch those sails, then which group are we? Sun on our backs, the triceps and biceps, veils, the axillary tufts, the courtyard filling with a single mimosa. We're dead long since, says someone, as the wrecker's ball topples a wall that had mattered a lot. The pictures loom in over conversant furniture. Sheep are everywhere. Pastoral sails rhyme with souls. Nature permits him purple and gold pigments. Chunks of the stuff sliver the boards of the floor. We used silver before. For who has seen the wind and shone saying, the mummy, gesticulating from the attic, gesticulating from the attic? That is a deliberate repeat. But I didn't like it. My tongue wouldn't do it. Gesticulating from the attic, gesticulating from the attic. While Socrates brings the mail by the beard of socialism. Nor does beer affect the glass. Where the bottle's blue, the bar is too. Maison d'amour with a straight face. The house has a conscience. Only the table casts a shadow, and each object is isolate in this previous paradise to choice. Sleeping, hoodlums in sad space, reduced to color, shape, line, as in Apennine or Lurline. Monumental work, bad taste, smothered in flowers that fade and flowers that stay paint. Trees twist up out of earth, Clouds corkscrew, lineaments must be decided if they melt. Transmute, evidence equals F, dictates to experience equals X. As they come to a rest, the tantamount sleeper whose dreams lost their money. Color, to say something. What is the color of something? Or the sign of design? Faces are bits in a crowd, yet eyes guide as candles. The beard feels redder this morning to the terror in the mirror. The boughs will break, the slates scatter, the people below always below. The malady, imprinted in this place, don't tell me she isn't simplest. The clock has no hands for a reason. She waits there past the last crow, but is about to knock and speak to his parents. Bits of brightness make up lots out of a clear blue sky, and there, in view of several people, although further down the beach, took it out, smooth, warm, large as life, to play with. That's when that one stops.
Thank you, David. That was really wonderful again, and really entertaining and enjoyable. I'm sure many of you have questions. We'll open the bar, and there's still lots of food around, and we hope you'll stay as long as you want this afternoon. I just do want to remind everyone, and please tell anyone you know, and be sure that you put it down in your calendars, that on the 5th of November, it is the 5th, isn't it? Yeah, the 5th of November that weekend is the whole Italian conference that UCLA, Sun and Moon Press, and several other organizations are co-sponsoring. And there'll be some of the major Italian poets here in the city: Emilia Roselli, Giancarlo Maggiolino, Ciporello, many others, as well as a lot of American writers like Rosemary Waldrop, Gil Sorrentino, Nathaniel Tarn, Jerry Rothenberg, and many others. And we'll be having a big party for everyone. And you're all welcome to attend at 4 o'clock on that Saturday. This is a week from 2 weeks from this Saturday. So please put it on your calendar, and as I said, let people know, and we look forward to seeing all of you. Thanks for coming today. Yeah. And there will be readings too, several. Not all of them will be readings, but several. There are other events too at Beyond Baroque the night before. And at other places. I have some flyers. And
then you discover you share birthdays.
Thanks again, David.
Thanks, Douglas, for having me.
So what you don't know is I've told that same story to people I've ever met, so keep having these parties.
Well, that was a reference to Anne Livingstone.
Excuse me, turn on some more music.
Isn't this a lovely green?
It is a lovely green. It was a little bit obnoxious in the shot, though.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. I enjoyed your performance very much.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was a performance.
It was.
I was acting relaxed.
Well, you did a real good job of it.
Thank you.
Now I have to get those red socks. There we go.
Good. I'm glad you could be here for it.
What was the line about the self as the bottom line?
Yeah, replacing the self with the bottom line.
That line, that affected me very deeply.
Yeah.
But I really, I'm totally understand it.
It doesn't, it's like very rare.
I don't feel the same.
Here you go.
It's too much trouble to get my glasses out.
It's incredible.
You know, I don't know the degree of connection of it to these lines. I mean, that's one way for me to read it and have some sense of what I was transmitting there. So I'm not entirely sure.
But I tell you, this is what I think happens about readers. You can read a number of lines and all this.
Did you know David?
Yeah, for a long time.
David was reading, I believe,
And so yeah.
Based on but I don't think it's very difficult unless you're sitting down and reading.
This would be very difficult to read, but I think that my impression of them is that you could come and go on like that, as you described.
I saw you at
Listen to it, follow something, and then you leave the next 10 lines. It doesn't really make any difference because the poem is going to add up at the end. In terms of the narrative. Yes, that's right. In terms of every line. I mean, those lines belong together in various ways. It's the hunch I had, but I think you could leave some of them out, and it wouldn't ruin the poem. In a sense, the poem is ruined already. As a ruinable object, I've ruined it. That's my impression, so that it doesn't really matter. The bits and pieces are there. Salvation isn't really the word. Scavenging. It's a pre-ruined poem. It's more like it's funny because
that's the way to listen to it.
I mean, that's how I read it. Yeah. When I'm reading it, I can't. Of course, I have to.
Thank you.
Try to stay with each line. But when I read it myself at home, I stop and then I skate or skip, and then I stop again. I hunker down with it, and then I get up and move on. And then, of course, I've read them all dozens of times now, but I've stopped at different things at different times.
It's a very interesting thing to me. See some people really narratives sort of embodied in the form of promise. That's everything you can really Jerry, promise me no matter how much you consciously want to say this is narrative, it's just a very narrow perception because there's so many words in
Yes.
Well, it's a material in it, like none of this is a material in it. But it's not written to fit that. Of course, it's written in a society that, to a large extent, thinks it lives by that. Although we don't.
We really don't.
No, we don't. But we think we do. And so it's upsetting, to the extent that that's the expectation. Because it won't. I have written poems that are much more consequential in an obvious way than the narrative. But I've written those, and there's no point doing it again. I was more interested, like I say, in a personal poem that would include the way, trying to think. You can't think without jumping. Thought is a matter of jumping, and yet. What we teach the kids in school is to, hide the jumps, right? Cover over the gaps. The gaps are cool.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
interesting. That's where.
And so what about perfection? And so things become limited in that sense because in the 12th, 11th century, the pulpit was right in the center of the church. During the Renaissance, it was put into a niche. So in other words, the center was taken away completely. And so all the other cultures were centered, but they were subjected because of they were gypsies or black.
But you really get like staggering life.
He would tell you, of course, she would tell you, unidirectional thinking cannot exist. So,
But I wish
that's like what I'm trying to point out is that how can something that's only 2,000 years old create, the reality of something that is is 5 billion years old? So, there maybe has an element
bit of that primordial energy. It certainly is. I think poets are a better way of tapping into that primordial.
We're talking about the performative. The very first reading I ever did in New York at St. Mark's, I had one piece that was sort of performative, which I read first, and I had arranged that three people in the audience, Charles, Nick, somebody else, would get up at a certain moment and they would shout the lines in the middle of my reading, which were related because it was a sort of performative moment. So I started reading the poem. Charles got up on cue and shouted his line, and Nick got up on cue, and pretty soon everybody started jumping up and shouting out lines.
They didn't know they were supposed to.
Everything. It was like good. And afterwards somebody said, "Gee, that was a really wonderful piece, but you shouldn't have had so many people."
Well, one of my early readings, I heard about all these goings on, and I decided to try it too. So I got a bunch of Confederates together, and what I arranged was that periodically in the course of my reading, they would applaud.
On cue or just
At the end of a poem.
arbitrary? Oh, at the end. Random applause.
Whenever you
It's terrible when you get
scratch your head.
reading and one poet gets so much more applause than the others.
Or poetry readings, more likely one person gets more oohs than the other.
I've been to some poetry readings where there's a lot of
Strange looks like, what's he saying?
Who are you reading to?
Except in your end, where I read past President Kennedy.
Now we're over here developing a video Talmud, a computerized Talmud that has.
How did you know I was a Jewish man?
How did you not know I was too?
How did you
No,
not?
I'm surprised.
So we're trying to figure out how we would do a computerized Talmud.
And one thing we came up with was the idea that there would be a little window with sign language. And Howard suddenly realized.
What would sign language for the Talmud be? Oink! You have to have two windows. Then you have like dialogue windows, ad infinitum, but even more important, you get monologue windows.
You'd always have to have this sort of voiceover reminding
No, you get
of
three
something.
voices over.
Yeah.
It's two people, but you get three voices, and they keep arguing.
And no one's sure where the vowels go.
Guest of honor. How's dinner?
This is a camera obscura.
How's dinner?
I have no words.
For dinner?
I'm transported beyond words.
I understand.
He's making love to the camera again, just like he did in Sebastopol.
Listen, you should eat this while it's hot.
We should eat it while it's what?
Yes, while it's hot.
Now this is a little bit hot, but not too hot.
Now, don't just tape your food.
Oh,
Yes, you do.
Eat it.
Oh, you get little soup spoons even though it's not a soup.
it's not a soup.
Stubborn about that, you know? They put it in that pattern, so you get it in a bowl.
I couldn't even guess no.
Excuse me. I have something to tell you. Is this the one we're supposed to warn is hot? What's the special for today?
We're going to have a birthday gift inaugural.
A birthday gift.
Birthday anti-time. Remember to
She is. She's filthy.
Have you seen the movie Forrest Gump? Forrest Gump? No.
I make a movie myself.
You do? What's it called? What's the name? Okay, make a movie now. Tell us about John Penn.
Let's do this.
So you have a relation to JFK. You memorized something that he said once.
My grandpa cooking from his grandmother. And they have a affair.
My friends over there. John Penn or the grandpa?
My grandfather was a chef. John Kennedy's grandma is a Chinese food lover. And they made many restaurants.
Good. Good facts. You like these facts? That's what we understand. I'd like to hear some more of those. Name.
So you're going to sing?
Is there a future in it? Can I get
Yeah, it's on. I've been waiting for you.
Yeah, he's a mother. Oh, I see. Yeah, no, she switched on. So.
I've been waiting.
CSGO, no, wrong. That's wrong. I don't know why I switched on a bit. The purpose of today, not a victory body, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing the end. That's where it's beginning. Signifying renewal. That's where it's change. For I have sworn before you, Almighty God, to save the revolution out of beliefs. Our 4 years prescribed, yet a century and 3 quarters ago. The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of inequality and all forms of human life. The belief that right of a man came not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We will pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure successful survival and liberty. And ask not what a country can do for you, but ask what you can do for a country.
You like that, man?
I was inspired, really.
Yeah.
You gonna go join the
This is a Brucey entertainment. No exception. No more.
That's it.
Thank you. That was good. I'm impressed. Enjoyed it very much.
Those words again. This touch.
Hey, rang out the voices.
Momo again?
No.
Every time I hear those words.
You have to have a Merlot.
Glad you could be here tonight. We're having a good show tonight. We've got several interesting guests. We have Howard Fox, curator of the County Museum here in LA. We have Douglas Leslie, my friend and publisher of Sun and Moon Press. We have here Alden Nielsen, author of Reading Race and Reading Between the Lines.
Alden.
There's Alden. And we have yourself, but of course I can't speak about you because
Myself?
Oh, there you go. Good.
Was that a reflexive moment?
And we didn't get Charlotte.
And we have Shauna Howard, whose prose should be published and published soon.
Charlotte.
Hey.
And Howard at Blackman.
His prose is poetry, and his poetry remains on top.
That's over there.
Thank you. As opposed to myself, whose prose is prose and whose poetry is remainder.
Okay, David, here we go. Cheers. Happy birthday. The birthday boys.
Happy birthday.
Hey, Bill. Happy birthday.
Drink up, Bill.
I drink before I...
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
To you too.
Happy birthday, dear David.
And Alden.
Happy birthday to you.
Speech. Speech. No, he has the speech.
Speech.
Make a wish before you blow your candle.
Channel 44. There's a lot of good stuff in Channel 44.
I'm 44 years old.
Hey, you 44? It's both of their birthdays. 2 birthdays.
4 chords and some years ago. Huey Lewis and the News. Thank you.
You were born the same day, same year?
No, same day.
Actually, I'm just better preserved. What year were you born?
Oh, same year as you, but
Hard living.
there was a lot of there was a lot of debauchery.
Let's say
Mistake, you born Shima. You were born
Not I.
Lady Charlotte. Oh, she was born in
Joycey.
Oh.
Joycey?
One day I was talking to a student in California, KFI. The topic was whether illegal aliens benefit society or not. Last night home, I pick up the phone, name myself illegal alien, and I always pick up the first. And my comments was in 17th century, the pilgrims from England, they were illegal aliens. None of them had a visa passport. They were illegal aliens. Because years of the sons and grandsons immigrated there. You know, most the strongest country in the world, they didn't have here. At this point, we live in a very regular society. But now, the circumstances are changed. That time, those parents, they work on their own. It depends on nobody and themselves.
No welfare. No welfare.
No welfare. It depends on them.
David's eating all around this candle is still burning.
I'm
Well, there we go, a proponent.
You're for it? I'm for it. The reason why I'm for it, because
I think they should have stopped those pilgrims at the...
They should have stopped it. Yeah, let me explain to you why the reason I'm for it.
Good.
Immigrant.
I want to hear this.
Because, first of all, this is the land of freedom. People always forgot the land of justice. Our children entitled to be born because we are paying taxes.
I agree with
But
that.
these people, if they come here, of course they can come here. They come here, they pay for their children's education. That's one.
Well, most of them are paid.
No, I don't think this is kind of
Don't you
propaganda.
think there might be a better way to fix it? That's what I think.
I don't think kicking the kids out of school is the best way to
This is
do
going to
it.
cause more problems that are basically going to end up in our laps.
So let's put it this way. Let's assume these children that are in the why we should have
I don't think we should.
Would you like a burning candle?
Yes.
Can we light the other end?
Have some of this.
No, thank you.
Oh God, I wish I...
You did it. Look at that.
Snuffed out in its youth.
Oh, I missed it too. Darn.
Want to reenact?
No, it was like we got tricked.
They want to use your son for the ball.
Did you have to pay extra for that?
That's a rugby team's version of flirting.
Last game.
I can never get the terminology right. Is it a rugby scrim?
David, I thought you were going to sing something. Who was that? Who was he?
Sing an old rugby song.
I thought you were going to sing
If I were the marrying kind, which thank the Lord I'm not, sir, the kind of man I'd like to wed would be a rugby fullback. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Doesn't rhyme.
You know what it, rhyme, there's rhyme and rhyme.
Barnacle be able to say that?
But I'm from over to see a barnacle.
No, not Barnaby.
They have a lot of suggestive and double entendre lyrics to their songs.
Oh, so that's the attraction.
I don't usually repeat these in public.
No, I
I'm not sure if I'm going to do it
David
right
Bromige
now.
doesn't believe in double meanings and all that.
No, the poets don't do that, right?
The trouble with double entendre is just they're not really double at all, are they?
That's right.
Other than the people in punts and the tricks of the persons who were chuckling with them. That's the kind of songs they sing over there.
There are these incredulous looks about the table now.
There once was a maid.
Oh, it's limerick time.
It's almost done. No, let's hear the limerick.
I'm believing. Limerick time is here.
There's that old
Limerick time again.
When is limerick time, I fly?
It's limerick time again on the old red paper.
You won't find me here. I'll be dancing the tango in Dublin. When is Limerick time in Wales? There was a young fellow called Dave, but then I taught him to behave.
To a rave.
At the 99th stroke, he started to choke. And then they laid him in his grave. The only one I know is the one about
stranger approached this spot with gravity. John Brown is filling his last cavity. But you should say first that it's an epitaph for a dentist.
What's the rest of it?
That's it.
That's it.
It's not a whole limerick.
That's the end of it.
Oh, it's the end of it.
It's like a fly when you cut 4 of its legs off.
Let's look at the handstand.
Well, there's the pedagogical one. There was a young poet, there was a young man from Spokane whose poems never would scan. When told it was so, he said, "Yes, I know. It's because I always try to fit as many syllables in the last line of the poem as I possibly can."
Is that an octanash?
It's like a school dash. It's Nashish. Nash like.
Wasn't there an anthology called The Golden Trashery of Octanashery?
Golden Trashery. There's a new book back there.
They're not new. Yeah, he's right.
You'll be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth.
He's writing them from the grave.
He would.
I heard that in Manhattan.
While spinning in my grave.